Hey people, you're underneath a 2012 Cruze. This one is fitted with the 5-speed transmission. We're going to drain this fluid out and top it back up. We have a fill point that's hidden up in here, and we don't actually have a drain point on these other than taking this cover off and letting it drain. So the first thing I want to do is just give it a good degrease, particularly up around near the fill point. I don't want any crud going back into it. We'll just give it a bit of a wash over. Now I'm just going to use some compressed air just to dry it off. Now before we drain anything out, I want to make sure that I can get that fill plug out. Sometimes they get really stuck or they're a unique fitting. Mine's just a straight up 13mm. So I'm going to use 13mm on an extension bar. Get it up onto that drain plug. Start undoing. Now a little bit of gearbox oil might come out when this comes out, but usually not. Oh yeah, there we go. Got a little bit coming out. Also notice the end of this has a magnet and there is some shavings. Look, that is typical to see something like that on the end of your drain plug. Don't be too alarmed. Now I do have a pan catching this fluid as it drains out. I'm going to knock most of these bolts out. Now there's never an easy way to control the flow once this comes out, but what I will do is I'm going to leave 1 or 2 in up the back, just finger tight. Now my plan is that when I undo these 2, it can kind of just hinge down and the fluid can drain out of this front point. That's the plan. So these ones are finger tight. I'm going to now remove the last few except for that one. Now I'm not brave enough to remove this one with an impact. I'm just going to do it slowly. We can already start to see the fluid is coming out. So it's a pretty messy drip out. So you want a fairly good sized catch pan here. Okay, there's no real neat way to do this. Let me just get this bolt out a little bit more. I'm going to loosen these ones up at the back, just allowing it to drip a bit more. Once it's nearly out, it's fairly easy to control. It's one of the bolts at the back fully out. And the second one. If we have a look in here, there's obviously no big metal shavings, but we do have this darker stuff here, which is interesting. We'll give that a good clean up now. This gasket here can be reused, so just go careful when you're cleaning it up that you don't damage it. So while it's here, you might as well give it a good clean out. Look, whilst I'm cleaning it out, I'm also looking just for any major wear or any obvious problems. Look, this gearbox was going fine, so I'm not expecting anything. But while I'm in here, I like to have a little peek as what's going on. Okay, so I've just cleaned this out here. This gasket is still in good condition, so I'm going to reuse it. Look, I wouldn't advise putting any silicone or anything on it. This gasket is still good enough to seal things up. So run a couple of bolts in, get everything lined up. Now these bolts are all the same, we're just putting the last one on. So they're all in place. Just going to push it right up and just finger tight, just 2 of them to hold it right up there. Done. Just going to go around and gently do these up. Just going to kind of zigzag it and jump it around a bit. Now I didn't look up the torque spec for these, but I'm just going to use a bit of common sense. Do them up by hand, just nice and firm. I'll go around twice, but let's do the first one. I don't want to over compress that gasket because it is a used gasket, but we do want this firm. So doing a second pass now. Done, so they're all done up. Now in different countries there are different specs of what transmission oil you're going to need and what grade, etc, etc. Also different models, so I'm not going to quote it. I'm using the one obviously that suits this car. Now this has a nice little hook that I can put up and into that fill hole, and that's going to sit there for me. I've still got the drip pan here because we're going to pump this up now until it just begins to overflow. I'm pumping oil in. If I saw any leaks or anything at this point here, I would be very concerned and obviously stop. Okay, so just pumping away on this. Now from memory, when I looked it up, I think it was about 2.5 litres. Okay, now I've got that just starting to now run out of that fill hole. So pull this out of the way. And look, you always get a bit of runoff. Maybe I didn't need those last couple of pumps on there. Now I've cleaned up the drain plug here, and this particular one has a magnet that just sits in there like that, so that's it all cleaned up. Now I do want to put just a little bit of sealant or something on these threads, bearing in mind when I put it into the gearbox has just been overflowing with oil, so it is going to be oily, so you really want a sealant that isn't going to be too stressed with having a bit of oil on it. I'm going to use some of this stuff. This is Permatex Aviation Former Gasket. It's like a liquid sealant. It's super sticky. Comes just with a little brush. And all I'm going to do is just give just a little bit on there. Might make it hard for the next person to get off, but it'll ensure that we don't have any drips. So we've still got some dripping here, but look, I'm okay with where that's at. So I'm going to put this plug back in. Really need to just be doing it by feel because you can't put your hand there and see at the same time. Okay, so that's running in nicely. Now just be careful with these, they don't necessarily bottom out, but often the plugs have a little bit of a taper on them, so they kind of just get tighter and tighter and tighter. Don't try and just use brute strength and just keep going tight as you can. Just do it up nice and firm. Now just give it a final squirt down. Get that little bit of remnants of fluid off. Particularly up where it was running out. Hey, now while this is all just getting cleaned off, please take the time to hit the subscribe button. Check out some of my other videos. Any comments, questions, tips, leave them below, and thanks for watching.